All right, guys, welcome to Mana Drain. This is episode 35. I'm Moxborn again, flying solo tonight. Eli is in bed sleeping, hopefully. Fingers crossed. But no, it's going to be a good cast tonight. I've got a kind of a big topic I wanted to talk about. We had the Rivals of Ixalan come out. And as you guys know, Eli and I built we called it a Dino Stompy deck, when Ixalan, the original set, came out, based around the dinosaurs, right? This is something that he wanted to build and something he was excited about, so I was like, hey, let's go ahead and build a deck. They were prominently in red and green. There was a few other choices, but the main of our deck was red and green. If you can go back and watch the video from 3 or 4 months ago on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/72DPI online. You can check that out there. A lot's actually changed. We're going to be diving into that, but before I do want to let you guys know, give you a heads up, make sure you head over to the YouTube channel. Like I said, get subscribed to the channel for content like Magic content. We also have different things on there like video games and other podcasts and things like that. We're really looking to expand the group. I think we're up to 23 subscribers, so that's awesome. Our goal for February is to be up to 30. And then going for 10 subscribers per month after that. So let's get there. So tonight we're going to, like I said, we're going to dive into our Dino Stompy deck and show you kind of the changes and things like that we've made to the deck. And hopefully I'll be going to Friday Night Magic with it for the next couple weeks to kind of test it out. And we'll start a whole new series on how we can evolve decks and really kind of show people how to build a deck, brew a deck, and then how to tweak it and things like that for your meta. So we'll talk about like what decks we ran into. I'll keep notes and things like that about what decks I ran into, what I lost to, what was a turning point in the games and stuff like that. So that'll be a whole nother video series kind of following this deck. But I figured we should probably update the deck since last time we talked it was like I said 3 months ago, and yeah, so there's been a lot of changes and stuff like that, especially with the banned and restricted list updating. So there's a huge shift in what we needed to play against and stuff like that. So yeah, Mom asks, where is everybody? Well, Mom, everybody is sleeping. No, Eli is in bed. It's way too late for him to podcast. So he had a choice between two options: podcasting with me or doing something else. He wanted to do the other thing, so I was like, you know what, have the night off. Amanda's actually getting her hair cut right now, so she should be back sometime around 9 o'clock, I think. So maybe she'll grace us with her presence. So we're gonna update the deck here. So what is the Dinosaurs deck? What is this? What are we trying to do with this deck? And the answer is simple: play some big ass dinosaurs, and we also are kind of encapsulating in kind of like engulfing the enrage mechanic, really kind of taking it to heart and playing all the fun cards there are in there. -1 card. There is no Polyraptor in this deck. Not yet, at least. That's not the finisher that we were going for. We stuck with the Carnage Tyrant, and we'll kind of get into that as far as our finishers are concerned. But let's start where I'm looking to start, and that's with our ramp. So playing big creatures oftentimes means you have to ramp into bigger things, right? You need to play creatures that are smaller but give you extra mana abilities, or give you things at a cheaper cost, or anything like that. So there's actually quite a few cards in Standard right now that are in our colors in red, green, and white. We've added white to the deck. That lets you get extra mana, make things cheaper, and things like that. You've got a huge selection to pick from. So the kind of the group that we've selected here was not on accident. We've play tested it a couple different ways, ran through like some of the scenarios and things like that. So this one is Kajani's Caller. This is a new addition to the deck. Dinosaur spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. right? So if you've got a dinosaur that costs 4 with 1 generic mana somewhere in there, it now costs 3, right? It's a 0/3 that you can play on turn 1. Obviously, you have to have a plains out, and we'll get into our mana base, which our mana base is completely changed, which is kind of interesting. We'll get into that at the very tail end. But so this is our 1-drop in our 1-drop slot. We do have a second 1-drop as a backup with Commune of the Dinosaurs. Commune is not a traditional ramp spell. When we say ramp, we mean getting from 1 mana to 2 mana on turn 1, right? So Commune of the Dinosaurs lets you pay one green mana, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a dinosaur or a land card from among them and put it into your hand and put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So when I say ramp, I mean you've got 1 land and now you have 2 lands, right, in play. This card technically doesn't ramp you. It's a mana fix. So let's say in your opening hand, you have all forests, and you have this Commune with the Dinosaurs, and you've got a white creature, right? You're not going to be able to cast that white creature because all you have are forests, which are green. They create green mana. So this lets you look at your top 5 cards. If you find a plains, which creates white mana, or something else that creates white mana, you can pull that out of your deck and put it in your hand. It doesn't go to the battlefield, so that's not what we call ramp. So this is kind of like a mana fixer. Since we're playing 3 colors, it's a lot more prominent in our deck now than ever before because we've added that 3rd color. And actually, two of the cards that we're going to be playing with have dual mana colors, meaning they have 2 of 1 symbol. So we have to have 2 white symbols. So at any rate, this card lets us do that. The other thing that it's really good for is late game. If you don't have a finisher and you draw this card, it lets you dig 5 cards deep, look at the top 5 cards, and find the best finisher for the situation that you're in. So it's good late, it's good early. Either way, it's a solid card. Not ramp, but it's still a solid card. Going back to our ramp spells, though, where's the other one at? Please tell. There it is. So this one, I believe, was in the original deck as well. At least it should have been. Otepec's Huntmaster. So this is our 2-drop. So we go Kajani's Caller, 1-drop for 1 white. Dinosaur spells you cost 1 less to cast. Great. And then turn 2, we play this Human Shaman. Dinosaur spells you cast cost 1 less. So therefore, your dinosaurs cost 2 colorless mana less to cast. This guy also has an added ability which lets you tap to target dinosaur, gets haste until end turn, meaning they can attack the turn they come into play. This is a huge benefit for us. We're playing a full play set of these, just like the Caller, the 1-drop. This is a huge advantage to us, especially since we're taking the first two turns off to play non-dinosaur spells. So when you drop this guy on turn 2, whatever you're going to play on turn 3, which hopefully is a 4-drop, and we'll get into that in just a second, you can tap this Huntmaster, give that dinosaur haste, and swing in. So we have we've got a couple different dinosaurs to pick from. But that is essentially our ramp spells. The other spells that we could have chose that we play tested with, let's see here. There was one that we pulled out, which was, where was it? This guy right here, Drover of the Mighty. So this guy is a ramp spell. He's a 1/1 for 2 mana, and you tap him to add any 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So if you need white, you can tap him for white. If you need red, you can tap him for red. If you need another green, you can tap him for green. Very versatile card. It was an extremely hard decision to take him out because he gets +2/+2 if you control his dinosaur, so he's a 3/3. But he's not doing what we're wanting him to do, right? He's not giving us... We're not going to attack with him. He's not going to chump block. We're looking to get as many big creatures out as quickly as we can, and he doesn't give our creatures haste. So we prioritized the Huntmaster because of his haste ability over the Drover. So again, still a good ramp spell, still a good creature, right? But at the end of the day, the Huntmaster is a 1/2. So he's got 2 defense. So there's still spells that kill him, but there's a select few that deal 1 damage to target creature that the Huntmaster will avoid, that the Drover is susceptible to on turn 2 and as well turn 3. So that's why we kind of went with the Huntmaster over the Drover. So the other spell that actually might make it into our sideboard, especially, it might make it in the sideboard because of its second ability, not necessarily its first one. So it's kind of a similar case to the Huntmaster, or excuse me, not the Huntmaster, the Drover. You can tap to add any 1 color to your mana pool. Now this is a 3-drop, so it's played even later in the game, but it's got 3 toughness, which is fantastic compared to the Huntmaster at 2 and the Drover at 1. But this guy's second ability, sacrifice him, return target dinosaur card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is a great option if you're playing against a control deck, which is countering your dinosaur spells, which is destroying your tap to add mana spell creatures and things like that. Try basically control the game, right? So you've got a couple dinosaurs in the late game that are in your deck or in your graveyard. You want, you're not drawing any or whatever, and you want to be able to get one of those guys out of your graveyard. This guy does that. Unfortunately, he's a little too slow in the fact that he costs 3 mana. It's nice that you can do his second ability the turn he comes down, so he's not affected. He still has summoning sickness, so you can't tap him to use it to add mana to your mana pool. But you can sacrifice him to pull a creature from a dinosaur from your graveyard. So you can play him and then pull a dinosaur and then play the dinosaur. Hopefully in that combination, all at the same turn. So this might be a sideboard card just for those matchups where you're getting a control heavy deck and you're not racing anybody. So that is our ramp spells to help us get our creatures out, our dinosaurs out faster. So let's talk next about our early game. And let's see here. Let's start with the Ceratops. All right, so Siegehorn Ceratops. It costs 2 mana, 1 white, 1 green. So remember, we've got Kajani's Caller out, and we've got Otepec's Huntmaster, which they reduce converted mana cost by 1 for each of them, but this guy doesn't have any colorless mana in him, so he doesn't benefit from either of those abilities. He still costs 1 green, 1 white. However, the Huntmaster can give him haste. So if we play this guy on turn 3, right, we're not really ramping, but we're going to be able to attack with him on turn 3. Hopefully getting to activate his Enrage ability, which is whenever he's dealt damage, you get to put 2 +1/+1 counters on him. The tricky part to this is he has to survive. So if the player if your opponent blocks with a 2/2, both creatures are going to kill each other, and the Ceratops is not going to get the +1/+1 counters. So essentially, the idea would be to play him on turn 3 in that situation, and then play something that dealt him 1 point of damage from your hand, and we'll get into those in just a second, to get him an extra boost in power and toughness. Our second card, this is kind of like our early to getting into our mid game, our mid to late, or I guess not late game, mid game, is where did he go? Ripjaw Raptor. So this is another card has been in the set or in the deck since day one. Ripjaw Raptor is a 4/5 for 2 green and 2 generic with Enrage that says when he's dealt damage, you draw a card. So this card, this is the kind of the ramp that we're kind of hoping for, right? So turn 1, Kajali's Caller, right? 1 drop, 0/3, reduces cost by 1. And then turn 2, the Huntmaster, which is a 1/2 for 1 red and 1 generic. And that reduces the Ripjaw down to 2 green mana for 4/5. And then the Huntmaster will be able to tap and give your Ripjaw haste so he can attack that turn. So effectively, turn 3, you're looking to deal 4 damage from this Ripjaw Raptor. And hopefully what they have, even if they chump block, Hopefully, you're drawing a card off of it. Obviously, you're not going to be drawing a card because you've used all your mana at that point to actually cast the thing. There is a chance that you'll have a way to you'll have a red mana available to cast something to deal him damage to give you an actual card in hand. So that option is available. We'll get to that in a second. The other card that's a new addition to the deck, and I'm actually kind of excited. Originally, we didn't put this in here because I thought it was too slow, and it didn't feel like it was as strong as I thought it could be. So this is the Forerunner of the Empire, new addition from the new set of Rivals of Ixalan. It's a 1/3 for 4 mana, so it's a little on the pricey side for what it does, or for its numbers. So it's 1 red and 3 generic. It's a human soldier, so it doesn't get affected. It doesn't take advantage of the Huntmaster or the Caller's reduction cost. So you are paying 4 mana for this creature. But what it does for us is when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a dinosaur card, reveal it, shuffle your library, and then put the dinosaur on top. So on turn 4, if we don't have our Ripjaw Raptor or we don't have one of our finishers, this lets us search our entire deck for one of those dinosaurs, right? So it's a great way to find a finisher, and we've got a couple good ones in here that we'll get to in just a second. But his second ability is one that I think will really grow well with this deck, with this Enraged deck, is whenever a dinosaur enters the battlefield under your control, you may have Forerunner of the Empire deal 1 damage to each creature. So that's every creature across the board. Your creatures, their creatures. So if they have a lot of 1/1 vampire tokens, like in the vampire decks, the red deck, the aggro red deck, a bunch of their creatures have 1 toughness. This will get rid of them. This also makes combat rough for your opponent because if all their creatures already have 1 point of damage, so it lets you gives them some really terrible blocks, essentially. Like they lose a lot of creatures because of that 1 point of damage is already on the creature. But for us, what it's doing is if you go back to, like, for instance, our Ceratops, right? Our Ceratops is a 2/2 with Enrage, but when it gets dealt any damage, it gets 2 +1/+1 counters. So let's say turn 4, just for example, turn 4 we play our Forerunner of the Empire, right? We search up the Ceratops, put the Ceratops on top of our deck. Turn 5 rolls around, we draw the Ceratops, play the Ceratops, right? Ceratops comes into play, and then the Forerunner's ability triggers. So then we can say, okay, do we want to deal 1 damage to everything? Sure do. So everything takes 1 damage, including the Ceratops. So the Ceratops now is a 4/4, but with 1 damage. So really a 4/3. And then at the end of the turn, damage is resolved. It retains those 2 counters, so it's still a 4/4. That happens every time it's dealt damage. So in the Ceratops example, dealing at that first point of damage is the most crucial, right? So being able to protect it and without killing it, deal at that 1 damage is going to be probably one of the hardest plays that you've got that we've got going forward. But that's not the only enraged trigger that we could possibly have, right? So going back to our Ripjaw Raptor, this will, anytime a dinosaur comes into play, we can have the Forerunner deal 1 damage to all of our creatures, including the Ripjaw Raptor. So then we'll draw a card. So these are all different instances where we will benefit from 1 damage to all creatures. Obviously, you can't play if you play if you play 3 creatures, 3 dinosaurs in 1 turn. All the damage will go through, but Forerunner is going to be taking that damage as well. So because it says deals all creatures 1 damage. So that's a downside to the creature itself. We'll get into some combat tricks and things like that here in just a minute to kind of, in the worst case scenario, you can save your guy, but it's not entirely necessary. So our mid to late game cards. Here we are. Trapjaw Tyrant. So this is a new one. This is a 5-drop. So this is the card we were talking about earlier where it's got 2 white in it. So 3 generic, 2 white for a 5/5 creature, which isn't bad. 5/5, 5 mana, not too shabby. But the reason why we have 2 of these in our deck is its Enrage ability. Whenever Trapjaw Tyrant is dealt damage, exile target creature an opponent controls until Trapjaw Giant leaves the battlefield. So this allows you kind of to control your opponent's field. It will, the argument is, oh well, if you get, if you Trapjaw a whole bunch of creatures, you've effectively made one card a huge target on its back. So once that one card leaves the battlefield, they get all their stuff back. And I agree. I agree. But what we're looking to do here on turn, as early as turn 4, play this. We're looking to, or even is it turn 4? I think turn 4, maybe turn 3, turn 1, turn 2. Yeah, if we play our cards right on turn 3, we will have 5 mana, 2 white, 1 red, and you could have possible of 2. You could have a possible of 5 mana on cast the spell on turn 5, or turn 3. So, on turn 4, attacking with this guy, or even if you have Huntmaster in play, being able to attack with this guy on turn 3 is a great way to, or turn 4, excuse me, to control the battlefield, and then turn 4, turn 5 after this guy comes out, being able to deal at 1 damage to get rid of their big, their 5 drop or whatever. And kind of like the argument, in my opinion, kind of gets null and void when I'm controlling what's on your battlefield, right? Yeah, you can get rid of this 5/5, but if I can deal this creature 1 damage, take your best thing, swing in for 4 or 5 points of damage, 6 points of damage, and then next turn kind of rinse and repeat. If you can't answer that card, you're only going to be able to take 3 or 4 turns of damage before this deck just overruns you. So between searching it up with our Forerunner, being able to find it by within the top 5 with our Commune with the Dinosaurs, it's a good way to finish the game, a good way to take control and stabilize the game if you've got an enemy combatant that's really kind of mucking up the board or whatever. This is also a great answer for the Scarab God, as it usually there's no way that someone will play the Scarab God when this is on the battlefield, right? Even if I have no cards in hand, when you play a Scarab God, the chances that me drawing a spell, and we'll get to my spells here in a second, that damages this Trapjaw to get rid of your Scarab God is highly likely. So our other card that we've added to the deck, and I believe this wasn't in the original, but it was talked about because of the cost, we left it out. Now we've got 2 of them in our deck. Boom. 2 Carnage Tyrants. So this is a 7/6 for 6 mana. 2 green, 4 generic. It's got Hexproof and Trample, and it can't be countered it's a 7/6. So one of the benefits to having this card in our deck is control players have a real tough time getting rid of it. Especially in black and blue, there isn't a lot of mass removal, right? And by mass removal, I mean non-targeted. So, like, you can't use a spell that says target creature loses, takes 10 damage, or target creature, destroy target creature. Because this has hexproof, it stops them from doing that. They have to play a card that says deal 6 damage to all creatures, right? Destroy all creatures, something that doesn't have the word target on it. The other thing that they struggle with is, especially in blue, is countering magic. You can't counter this dinosaur. So on turn 4, being able to go get Forerunner, and then turn 5, because of our Huntmaster and our Caller, being able to drop this Carnage Tyrant on turn 5, giving it haste is like the slowest case scenario, right? Obviously on turn 6, playing it for its mana cost would be the slowest case scenario, but getting this out 2 turns earlier, right? Because turn 1 you play Caller, so that makes it 5 mana, and turn 2 you play Huntmaster, right? So that makes it 4 mana. So turn 3 you should have 3 land in play plus these 2 guys, so you'll play Trapjaw, right? Trapjaw will come into play. And then turn 5, boom, you've got your Carnage Tyrant. So it's capable of coming down fairly quickly. Giving it haste is another reason why we went with Hutmaster over the Drover, kind of like what we talked about before. So at the end of the day, this is our finisher. We could have went with the Polyraptor. Polyraptor, I don't think I have it queued up here. Let me see here. I don't. Let's see here. Let me see if I can get it pulled up here. Cards, rivals, Polyraptor. Here it is. Okay, so Polyraptor is an enraged creature, which you might think like, oh, this is your enraged deck. Why are you not playing? Why is your top deck or your top tier finisher an enraged card, right? And let me explain that. So it's 8 mana for a 5/5. Terrible cost. 2 green, 6 generic, and its enrage is whenever it's dealt damage, you create a token that's a copy of Polyraptor. So there's this huge long combo with the Forerunner of the Empire where you can basically get 6 or 7 of these things on the battlefield, because when you make a copy, it retains that ability. So you deal 1 damage to the one, it makes a copy that's a 5/5. So now you have a 5/4 and a 5/5. You deal another point of damage, and then it makes another 5/5, and therefore it like kind of spirals out of control. Obviously, it'll end with the Forerunner itself dying, right? Because the Forerunner could only take 3 points of damage. See, now I'm all the way messed up here. Oops, that's backgrounds. Because the Forerunner only has 3 points of 3 hit points, right? So, or 3 toughness. So the Forerunner will eventually die. So I think it caps out at 7. I think you get 7 tokens if memory serves of the Polyraptor. But the idea is like we're not looking to go infinite. We're not and the Polyraptor itself isn't that great of a card in the sense that. Yeah, it's a 5/5, but 1/1 blocks it, right? And you're making all these 5/5s, and then they're taking 1 point of damage to create another one. So the toughness is going down every time you make a copy for that turn. So it's not like you can give all of them haste and then just swing in, right? It's a good way to lose your board. So you got to take a turn off to actually wait to attack. They don't have trample, so if they get chump blocked by a 1/1, that stops them, right? So it doesn't give you the opportunity to finish the game quickly, right? It's not like it's more of a mid-range finisher. What we're going for here is more of a aggro to mid-range, right? Being able to give one creature haste and attack in with it that's got evasion out the wazoo, like Carnage Tyrant, which is hexproof and can't be countered, but also it's got a great combat ability with trample, right? So if they do, they've got to block 6 points, or to take it down, they have to block 6 points or hit it for 6 points of damage. There's only a couple turns that you can take 7 points of damage from a Carnage Tyrant before you are dead. So that's the idea. Let's see here, kind of getting back to our deck. So that's our finisher. So we talked about our intro game, our early game with our two ramp creatures, mid game with our Forerunner, the Ceratops, and then the Ripjaw Raptor, and then our closing game with the Carnage Tyrant, and then kind of like our control mid game is our Trapjaw. So how are we triggering these abilities? All right, what are we doing to ensure that even if we don't have the Forerunner out, what kind of spells do we have to get these bonuses from our dinosaurs? So the first one is pretty self-explanatory. This was in our original deck. It worked fabulously, especially with Ripjaw Raptor. It is Ryle for 1 red. It's a sorcery. Deal 1 damage to target creature you control. That creature gains trample until end of turn, and you draw a card. So for 1 mana, obviously, you got to have a creature on the battlefield to cast it. You can't just cast it on an empty board on your side. And it's a creature you control, so it doesn't have to necessarily be a dinosaur. So if you're kind of stuck with, turn 6 or turn 7 and you've got a caller on the battlefield that's an 0-3, and you draw your Ryle card. You're like, okay, well, I don't have anything to play right now, so you just want to cycle it away. You deal 1 damage to the caller and draw a card. Obviously, you're not going to attack with the caller or anything, but you get a new card. That's the worst case scenario, is when you have 1 or no creatures on the battlefield. Best case scenario is with either Trapjaw Trapjaw Tyrant, which you can exile one of their creatures and then draw a card off Ryle. Or if you have Ripjaw Raptor, which will let you draw a card off of your Ryle card, which we have here, and then also when you deal 1 damage to your Ripjaw Raptor, that will give you a card as well. So you're paying 1 mana for 2. There he is. 1 mana for 2 cards. So, hopefully that'll bring in some extra value for you. At least it should. So, this, again, dealing 1 damage to your Ceratops. This is a 1 mana, 1 damage spell that will help buff your Ceratops. So it becomes a 4/4, and so on and so forth. Kind of like I talked about with that one, the struggle with that card and how well we're, that's going to probably be the first card that gets cut out of our Enrage cards, because it's so vulnerable at that first stage. But after you get it, that 1 point of damage to change it to a 4/4, it becomes so much better. So you don't have to worry about it nearly as much. There you go. You don't have to worry about it nearly as much. So that's Ryle. Giving creatures trample, that's another positive thing. I mean, if you're gonna attack in with Trapjaw Tyrant, it's worth it. But at the end of the day, the trample's like the third piece of the puzzle on that card. Obviously, the 1 point of damage and draw card are kind of neck and neck depending on what you have on the battlefield, and then trample's last. Next up, the other way there's 2 more ways that we are going to trigger our Enrage abilities. Now, this card is a little bit more it's got a little more utility than Ryle, because Ryle can only target our guys, right? Dual Shot is, again, another 1 red. It's an instant this time, so we can cast it during our opponent's turn. So if they do some shenanigans, with some cheaply costed creatures, or if we've got a Tyrant on the Trapjaw Tyrant, we can, and we don't like what we see, like if they make a really big attack, we can get rid of something with Dual Shot. Like I said, it's 1 red. Dual Shot deals 1 damage to each of up to 2 target creatures, right? So it can't be the same creature, but you can target 2 different creatures. So if it's, best case scenario on our side, we target 2 of our Enraged dinosaurs and get the benefit out of it. If it's, the worst case scenario, let's say they're attacking with 2 1/1s or two different 2/1 creatures, right? That would be kind of like the low scenario. So it does have the other nice capability of the card is it's up to 2 target creatures, so it doesn't have to be 2. So if you only have 1 enraged creature or only 1 creature you want to target, you can actually cast the spell. You don't have to have 2 targets in general. The other card that we haven't tried yet, and this is going to be new to this Enraged deck that we're building. It's an older card. It's called Walking Ballista, from Aetherworks, I think, or Aether Revolt, excuse me. So Walking Ballista is a 0/0 creature that costs XX. Essentially, the way that works is Walking Ballista enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters, right? So if you pay 2, right, for X, so X is 1 and then another 1, so 2 total mana, it comes into play with 1 +1/+1 counter. If you pay 4 mana, so 4 mana total, so 2 and 2, it comes into play with 2 +1/+1 counters. So you kind of see how it costs a lot to ramp up to make it stronger and more resilient, but it has a payoff, right? So you can pay 4, you can put a +1/+1 counter on him. So once he's on the battlefield, and let's say you paid 4 mana total, so he's got 2 counters on him. If you pay 4 mana, you can put an additional counter on him. So you have a way to kind of ramp him up. That can be any color mana. He doesn't benefit from the Huntmaster or the Caller because he's not a dinosaur. But the aspect of this Walking Ballista that we are using, and the reason why there's only 2 in the deck, right? We don't want to draw these guys all that often until the very end of the game, is you can remove a +1/+1 counter from Walking Ballista, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player, right? So this is a mana sink that if we can't get those points of damage through, you can build him up and kind of remove counters and deal damage right to the opponent. But the better choice of better use of those counters is removing them and dealing 1 damage to our enraged creatures. So if we've got a bunch of creatures on the battlefield that are on the other or on our opponent's side, you can pay 1 or you can remove 1 of these counters, so it's instant speed, doesn't cost you anything. Target the Trapjaw, remove 1 of their creatures from the game. If you want to draw a card, you got Ripjaw on the battlefield. That's how you're going to do that. If you've got the Ceratops on the battlefield, you'll remove a counter from this guy and add 2 counters to the Ceratops. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Like I said, there's only 2 in the deck. It's not a proven concept yet because we haven't tried it. We'll know more this Friday. Let's see here. So rounding out our spells, and this is another one that I'm not really too sure it's going to be in the deck for very long. There's really only 2 decks that this is used for, right? The red deck, the red aggro deck, because there's a lot of instant damage, and then there's a couple of the black decks and the Grixis decks that have like Fatal Push, which destroys target creature, and things like that. This is Blossoming Defense. It's 1 green. It says target creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains hexproof until end of turn. So effectively preventing or countering their targeting spells, getting rid of creatures, things like that. It's got a little bit of utility with the Forerunner, in the sense that if you've got a handful of creatures that creatures that you can play, you want to play more than 3 dinosaurs, you can give the Forerunner +2/+2, and that allows you to play a couple extra dinosaurs without it killing itself. So like I said, it's more of a sideboard card, really. We are going to put a couple in the sideboard, or 1 in the sideboard maybe to start out with, just to kind of side in when we play those decks that have the heavy removal spells and heavy control magic. So we'll see. The other card that seemed like a no-brainer to kind of add, since you're playing a dinosaur deck, where did it go? Savage Stomp. This card is a monster, right? We've got 2 in the main board, 1 in the sideboard. It costs 1 green and 2 generic for a sorcery. Although if you control a dinosaur, right? If it targets a dinosaur, it costs 2 less. So it only costs 1 green if you target a dinosaur with this. So it reads: put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So if that's the dinosaur, it costs 2 less, obviously. Then that creature fights target creature you don't control. So this is a great way to kind of boost up, your Ceratops. You can pick the Ceratops, put a +1/+1 counter on it, so it becomes a 3/3. It's a little more resilient, and you can pick their weakest creature, right, just to ramp the Ceratops up if that's the game plan you're looking for. If you're, as far as like the Carnage Tyrant, it really, it's a great way to get one of their big guys out of the way. Depending on the board state, Trapjaw Tyrant would be another target that you could go for. Just be cautious that you don't bring its toughness down to a level where they can target it with like removal or give it some damage points on there. So at the end of the day, that's our spells, spells and creatures, as far as the deck's concerned. Now, as far as our mana base goes, and this is probably going to be what changes quite a bit, because we're not, we're 3 colors, and we've got a couple spells that cost 2 of one color. So Trapjaw costs 2 white, Carnage Tyrant and Ripjaw Raptor cost 2 green. We've got a Ceratops, which costs 1 green and 1 white. So we've got a lot of 2 color and kind of like mana intensive spells, especially at our top end. So what are we using to kind of get the this magical Christmas land where we can play all these different color spells and actually get there? So first and foremost, which kind of seems out of place but actually helps out a lot, is Aether Hub. This is not an energy deck by any stretch of the imagination. Enters the battlefield, you get 1 energy counter. You can tap this to add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. So obviously you can't use that colorless mana to pay for, red, white, or green mana spells. But you can pay for the colorless portion of those spells with this. But you can also tap it, pay 1 energy, add 1 mana of any color mana pool. So Aether Hub will basically act as any color mana you want for 1 turn, right? So if you need to play that the Kajali's Sun Caller, right, the 1 mana white creature, and you don't have any planes in your deck, this is a good way to say, okay, turn 1 Aether Hub, and then tap for white and play the Caller. Now all your dinosaurs cost 1 less. You can continue on your curve and hope that you draw something else to help ramp you again. So that's our first mana fixing multicolor land. Now it's kind of sucks because it's only a 1-turn thing, but it counts for any color mana that we need, and it doesn't deal us any damage. And late game, it doesn't really matter. It still taps for mana. Along the same lines of getting that Jolly's Caller out turn 1 is a red-white dual land called Inspring's Vantage. It comes into play tapped unless you control 2 or fewer other lands. So you can play this as early as as late as turn 3, and it'll come to play untapped. If you play on turn 1, you've got a white mana source and a red mana source right there, which is the ideal situation. That way you can play a forest or a green mana producing land on turn 3 and go from there. So we've got that, and then our other dual color land is Rootbound Crag. This is an oldie but a goodie. Was reprinted in Ixalan proper. Enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a mountain or forest. So, and then we've got a couple mountains, a couple forests, and a couple plains to round out our deck. Like I said, we've got a varied set of cards that we need to play in a certain order. So the actual way we want to play these cards, right? So the order in which we're looking to play them. Let me pull these up here. So let's see here. Let's see if I can do this quick. So turn 1, we want to play Inspiring Vantage. So turn 1 comes into play untapped. We can tap it for red or we can tap it for white. So we're going to tap that for white, and we're going to play the Caller, right? So we have the Caller in play. We have our Vistage in play or Vantage in play. So now all of our dinosaurs cost 1 less, and we've got red and white mana. Access to red and white. Turn 1. Turn 2, we'll play a forest, right? So we've got a forest and the Vantage in play. So we got all 3 of our colors. And we'll tap the Vantage for red. And then we'll tap our forest for green. Doesn't matter. So there goes the Vantage. And we'll play the Huntmaster, right? So this is kind of like the dreamy Christmas land that is our 3-color dinosaur deck. So now our dinosaurs cost 2 less. right? We can give them haste with the Huntmaster. We have 1 green, 1 red, and 1 white mana producing land. Turn 3, untap, play a forest. So now we have 2 forests, a plain red and a white mana producing land. This is the perfect setup, right? So from here we can play we can play Ripjaw Raptor on turn 3. Right? So Ripjaw Raptor, where did you go? Boom. So we tap our 2 forests for green, and then we tap our... Oh, actually, we don't even need to tap our red. Don't even need to tap him. Nope. So we've got tap our 2 green, and our Caller and our Huntmaster take care of the 2 colorless mana. We've got a 4/5 on the battlefield. We can tap the Huntmaster to give the Raptor haste. We can attack for 4 damage on turn 3. With a 4 defense, that's pretty damn good. And force them to either block or take the 4 damage. If they block and don't kill the Raptor, we draw a free card. And then keep in mind, we also have our... we tapped our 2 forests for green mana, but we also have our turn 1 land that we played, the Vantage, the red and white mana. So if we have one of our 8... That's right, one of our 8 spells that deal direct damage to our creatures, either Rile or Dual Shot, we can draw a card, at least 1 card with Dual Shot, or if we have a Rile, we'll be able to draw 2 cards on turn 3, basically refilling our hand. Let me pull up a Rile here. So if we target our Ripjaw Raptor with Rile, we'll draw a card off Rile, because it says draw a card, and then because of the 1 damage to the Raptor, we'll draw a 2nd card. So, best case scenario, tap the Huntmaster on turn 3, give the Ripjaw Raptor a haste, attack in, it survives, we get the draw card off of that damage, and then we play Rile, draw a card off Rile, and then draw a card off of the 1 damage from Rile. So that wouldn't be too bad. Turn 3, either dealing 4 damage and drawing 2 cards, or attacking in and forcing the block and drawing 3 cards. That's the perfect case scenario. Now, the other thing that could happen is if you rewind a little bit, to turn 3, the beginning of turn 3, instead of playing our forest, we play a plains. If you play a plains, now you've got the correct mana for Trapjaw Tyrant, right? So unfortunately, we won't be able to do our little trick with our instant damage spell because we'll be tapping out on turn 3. There it is. So we'll have our Vantage that taps for white mana. We'll tap our Plains for the 2nd white mana, and then we'll tap the Forest for green mana. So there's 3 of the 5 for the Trapjaw, and then our Caller will take care of the 4th, and then the Hunter will take care of the 5th, and then we have a 5/5 on the battlefield. Turn 3. That's pretty impressive, right? Now, of course, that's Magical Christmas Land, guys. I understand that. Definitely do. There's counter magic involved. There is destroy target creature involved. There's instant damage. There's a whole bunch of different ways to deal with this. But the benefit is the Ripjaw Raptor replaces itself. The Tyrant, while it won't have any immediate advantage, it will give us the ability to get rid of one of their destroy spells. Right? It's got to take something, and if they start killing off our Callers and our Huntmasters, it's fine by us. Right? Use your kill spells on our 0-3s and our 1-2s. That's perfectly fine. Once we get to our turn 3, turn 4, turn 5. As long as we got the mana, we are set, right? So this deck is, if you get a deck, or you draw a 7-card hand, and you've got anything less than 2 land, you're probably not going to keep it, right? 2 land and some finishers, not going to keep it. If you've got any combination of your cost reduction creatures, those are that would count as a half land for me. So if you've got 2 of those and 2 land, that's a keeper. Things like that. So at the end of the day, the Commune with the Dinosaurs, that's a positive one. the Forerunner of Empire. While it's if it's countered, you don't get to search your library for a dinosaur, which kind of sucks. But again, you're at 4 mana, and they're countering your 1/3 human. That's perfectly fine. You want them to waste those spells on those creatures, so that you hopefully can draw into your bigger creatures going down the line. So final thoughts on the deck. Do I think it's tier 1? No, definitely not. I fully expect to maybe win 1 or 2 games at Friday Night Magic. We tweaked it a little bit when the new set came out. There was some cards that gave it that extra oomph. We added the other color. So at the end of the day, I feel like it's a solid deck. It's going to need a little tweaking. I know that. The mana base is probably going to change a little bit because of the amount of dual color cards we have and double costing cards we've got. So I'm aware of that, but I feel like this is a really good starting point. I've played several test games with it, just solitaire Magic, just kind of going through the motions and things like that. But it's a lot of fun to play. The other thing that'll probably change tremendously is the sideboard. Especially with the bannings that happened, like Ramunap Red was a huge disappointment. When this deck was like the original version of this deck was a huge disappointment when you're playing mono the Ramunap Red because of how powerful and how quick it was. So I think with the addition of Walking Ballista and the Ceratops, I think those will be a little bit more resilient to those decks. And we're adding in the Blossom of Defense to kind of help with protection and stuff like that. So we'll see how it goes. But I really appreciate you guys watching. Like I said, look for the video series on this deck evolving. We haven't quite figured out what we're going to call it or how it's going to be posted and things like that. But we will be adding a new video series following this deck and following the standard format at our local game store. So thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button on our page. Head over to youtube.com/72DPI online. Get subscribed if you're into the Magic the Gathering board game. Definitely get subscribed. We've got some video game videos and podcasts coming up this week. I'm really kind of looking forward to tomorrow night. We're going to be playing some Super Mario World on the SNES. So make sure you head over to twitch.tv/72DPI online to watch us live tomorrow night. Playing that. Wednesday, we've got our Ball and Chain podcast, a whole bunch of stuff. So, make sure you leave a comment in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next week. See ya.